I was always the dependable daughter. The one who stayed home, worked 2 jobs, paid the bills, and looked after my family. My younger sister, Emily, was the golden child. She was smart, beautiful, and everyone adored her. Especially my parents. They always doted on her: expensive clothes, private school, a new car at 18. Meanwhile, I bought my first used car with savings from my part-time grocery job. But I never complained. I knew Emily had potential. So I quietly took on more. I paid for half the mortgage without ever having my name on it. I paid the electric, internet, groceries, and most importantly, I secretly paid Emily's college tuition because I didn't want my parents to fall into debt for her sake. They never asked. They never knew. One Friday afternoon, I came home from work, tired and hungry, only to find my mom waiting at the door, red-eyed, furious. She didn't say a word at first, just threw a jewelry box at my feet. Inside was Emily's signature emerald necklace, broken. She said you took it, my mom snapped. What? I asked, stunned. She found it in your closet. That's when Emily stepped out from behind her, fake tears in her eyes. I trusted you, she whispered. And you just took it? I was speechless. I hadn't touched that necklace. I hadn't even been in her room in weeks. But they didn't give me a chance to defend myself. Dad came home and joined in. Pack your things, he said coldly. We're done. So I did. I walked out that night with nothing but a small bag, my laptop, and my dignity. They didn't know, they had no clue, that by kicking me out, they were also cutting off their own lifeline. Rent? I paid it. Utilities? Me. Groceries? Me. Emily's tuition? Me. I stopped everything. 2 weeks later, I started getting messages. First it was Emily. Hey. Weird question, but did you pay my tuition last semester? Then my dad, internet's been down for a week. Do you know what's going on? And finally, my mom, the electricity's off. We had no idea you were handling everything. Please come home. We made a mistake. I ignored them all. Then, the truth came out. Emily's ex-boyfriend messaged me on Instagram. He told me he saw her hide the necklace in my closet after a fight with her new boyfriend, just to make me look bad. He'd recorded her admitting it. I sent the video to my parents. No words. Just the video. Within an hour, I had voicemails from all of them. We're so sorry. We didn't know. Please come home. We miss you. But it was too late. I had moved in with a friend. I got a better paying job. I was happy. And for the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for anyone but myself. Let them figure it out. Let them finally realize that being the dependable one doesn't mean being disposable. Sometimes, walking away is the loudest message you can send. And mine was heard, loud and clear. Story 2, my brother tricked me into signing over our inheritance, until I exposed him at the family gathering. Ever since our parents passed, my older brother was treated like the golden child. I never questioned it, I just kept my head down and worked hard. But things changed when we inherited our childhood home. It was supposed to be split evenly between us. At least, that's what I thought. A month after the will was read, my brother came to me in tears. He claimed he was in deep debt, and if he didn't show some assets on paper, his creditors would come after him. I was skeptical, but he begged me to temporarily sign over my half of the house. He promised to sign it back in 6 months. Just until I get things sorted, he said. Stupidly, I agreed. He had always been manipulative, but I didn't think he'd do me dirty over something so serious. I signed the paper without reading every line. A mistake I now regret more than anything. Months passed. No updates. No re-signing. Every time I brought it up, he had an excuse. Then one day, I got a notice in the mail. He had taken a second mortgage out on the house, using the full property as collateral. When I confronted him, he laughed. You signed it over. It's mine now. Maybe next time you'll think twice about trusting someone just because they're family. That was it. I stopped talking to him. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I started digging. I found out he forged a signature on one of the forms, mine. I contacted a lawyer, presented my original signature samples, and they agreed. We had a case. I waited for the perfect moment to confront him publicly. That moment came at our extended family reunion, where everyone was present, uncles, aunts, cousins. I stood up and calmly laid out the timeline, the evidence, and the forged documents. I played a recording of our earlier conversations. The room went dead silent. My brother's smug face turned ghost white. Our family, who always defended him, looked horrified. The fallout was swift. He was charged. The house is back in legal dispute, but now with a strong case in my favor. My family? They're ashamed, apologetic, and now they finally see who he really is. I don't trust easily anymore. But I've learned to trust myself, and that's enough. Story 3, my mother-in-law secretly replaced my wedding dress, so I taught her a lesson she'd never forget. My wedding day was supposed to be magical. I spent months planning every detail, the venue, the food, the dress. Especially the dress. I saved for nearly a year to afford the gown of my dreams. It was elegant, simple, and completely me. But apparently, it wasn't good enough for my mother-in-law. From day one, she criticized everything. The cake wasn't fancy enough. The floral arrangements were too basic. And don't get me started on how she reacted to the guest list. Still, I tried to keep the peace, for the sake of my fiancé. But her true colors showed the night before the wedding. I stayed at my best friend's place for a little sleepover and final prep. The dress was already hanging safely at the venue, or so I thought. What I didn't know was that my MIL had somehow convinced the venue staff she needed access. She went in, swapped out my dress with a poofy, over-the-top princess gown that looked like it belonged in a kid's pageant. When I arrived on the big day and saw that monstrosity hanging in place of my dress, I was livid. My mom and I demanded to know what had happened. The staff checked the logs, and there it was, my MIL had signed in. I called her immediately. Her response? I did you a favor. That other dress made you look plain. This one will turn heads. I almost screamed. Instead, I took a breath, and decided to get even, without making a scene. I walked out of the venue and went to the backup seamstress I had hired months ago just in case. She had my exact dress design on standby, not fully finished, but wearable. We tailored it quickly, and I returned to the venue with my original vision intact. MIL was furious when she saw me in the right dress. Her face turned a shade of red I didn't know existed. But I smiled sweetly and walked down that aisle with my head high. Here's the kicker. During the reception, I took the mic and thanked everyone, and then added, special shout out to those who tried to hijack this wedding. You taught me to always have a backup plan. The guests murmured. Some even clapped. My MIL? She left early. After that, I went low contact. But I didn't stop there. My husband and I moved to a new city and built boundaries she couldn't bulldoze. Now, every time she tries to guilt trip us, I remind her, that was your choice. Not mine. And I never regretted it. Story 4, I refused to give up my inheritance to help my brother buy a house. Now my entire family is calling me selfish. When my grandfather passed, he left behind a modest inheritance. Nothing massive, but enough to make a difference. $85,000 to be exact, and he left it all to me. Not to my brother. Not split evenly. Just me. It wasn't a mistake. He had it in writing, with witnesses. He said it was because I was the one who always visited him, helped with his groceries, took him to appointments, and kept him company after Grandma died. My brother, on the other hand, barely called. When the will was read, my family was shocked. But I was more shocked by what came next. My brother, who hadn't spoken to Grandpa in months, suddenly felt entitled to half the money. He claimed Grandpa must have meant to split it, that I should do what's right. My parents backed him up, saying family comes first, and your brother needs a house for his growing family. Here's the thing, I was still living paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay off student loans and cover rent. This money was my shot at a more stable life. I told them I was sorry, but I wasn't splitting it. Cue the drama. My mom cried. My dad called me heartless. My brother's fiancé texted me saying I was ruining their dream of a home. I was breaking the family apart. I tried to stay calm. I told them, this isn't about greed. It's about finally having a chance to build something for myself, the way Grandpa wanted. They didn't care. So I stopped answering their calls. I took the money, paid off most of my debt, and put the rest into savings. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. But it didn't end there. A month later, my parents hosted a family barbecue. I was invited, reluctantly. I went, thinking maybe they were ready to move on. Nope. The moment I walked in, everyone went silent. My brother gave me a cold glance, and my mom handed me an envelope. Inside was a family agreement they'd drafted, where I'd agree to transfer half the inheritance to my brother, plus interest. I laughed, out loud. Then I handed it back and walked out. That was the last time I visited for a while. Weeks passed. Then, my cousin, who had heard everything, reached out. She told me Grandpa had confided in her too, saying he didn't trust anyone else to respect his wishes, that I was the only one who truly cared. That one call healed something in me. Now? I'm still estranged from most of my family. But I'm building a life my grandfather would be proud of, without guilt. And to this day, I don't regret standing up for myself. Because doing what's right sometimes means saying no to people who only show up when there's something to gain. Story 5, my brother used my inheritance to fund his wedding. So I showed up with receipts and a lawyer. When our grandmother passed away, she left behind a substantial inheritance. It wasn't much by millionaire standards, but it was everything to me, enough to finally pay off my student loans, put a down payment on a house, and maybe even open the small bakery I'd always dreamed of. There was one condition, the money was to be split between me and my brother, Chris. 50-50. No exceptions. Our parents were the executors of the will, and since I lived out of town, I trusted them to handle everything fairly. I never imagined they'd favor Chris so blatantly, or that Chris would be heartless enough to take what wasn't his. 2 months after the funeral, I got a generic email from our parents saying the inheritance had been distributed. I checked my account. Nothing. I called them immediately. Where's my share? My dad got awkwardly quiet, and my mom finally said, "Honey, we thought it would be best to let Chris handle the funds. He's getting married soon, and he really needs the money to start his life." My stomach dropped. What? That's not what Grandma wanted. Come on, Dad said. You're doing okay. Chris is struggling. He needs this. That's when I learned Chris had taken the entire $120,000 inheritance to fund his wedding and honeymoon. No one had asked me. No one even told me. They just decided I didn't need it. I was beyond livid. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I got organized. I contacted the estate attorney and got a copy of the will. Crystal clear, equal distribution between me and Chris. I hired a lawyer. Quietly. For 2 months, I said nothing to my family while the lawyer filed all the paperwork. Then I RSVP'd to Chris's wedding. I even sent a gift. The day of the wedding, I showed up, in a stunning dress, not out of place but definitely prepared to make an impression. Right before the ceremony, while guests were still arriving, my lawyer handed Chris and my parents' legal documents. My mom turned pale. My dad's mouth dropped open. Chris went beet red. I didn't interrupt the wedding. I smiled, took my seat, and watched the whole thing. 2 weeks later, my family was in shambles. My brother was being sued for misappropriation of inheritance, and my parents were named as complicit. Chris called me in a rage, saying I had ruined the happiest day of his life. I replied calmly, "You ruined your future when you stole from me." The court ruled in my favor. Chris had to return half the inheritance, plus legal fees. He had to sell his brand new honeymoon car and downgrade the apartment he'd leased for him and his new wife. My parents were furious, but I didn't care. I wasn't just standing up for myself, I was standing up for Grandma's wishes. Now, I've opened my bakery. It's called Nana's Legacy. And every cupcake I sell is a reminder that I didn't stay silent, I stood up and got justice. Story 6, I refused to be my sister's backup plan. Now she's begging me to forgive her. When my older sister got engaged to her dream man, my parents went all out celebrating. They praised her like she was royalty, throwing a huge engagement party, complete with fancy catering, decorations, and a guest list that rivaled a small wedding. I was the maid of honor. I helped plan everything. I stayed up late stuffing envelopes, making flower arrangements, and calming her bridezilla meltdowns. But I didn't complain. That's what sisters do, right? Then, just a month before the wedding, her fiancé dumped her. Turns out, he found out she'd been cheating with an ex the whole time. He left her in the most brutal way, on speakerphone, in front of our entire family, during a Sunday dinner. You'd think that would have been her rock bottom. But no. A week later, my sister started acting strangely nice toward me. Offering to help me with things. Asking about my love life, something she'd never cared about before. Then one day, she sat me down and said, "I know this is a lot to ask, but would you consider being my surrogate?" I laughed at first, thought she was joking. She wasn't. She said she needed a new purpose now that her fiancé was gone and wanted to start a family alone. She figured since I wasn't doing anything special with my life, I could carry the baby for her. I was stunned. My life wasn't flashy, but I had a stable job, friends I loved, and I was building something for myself. But to her, I was just a backup plan. I said no. Calmly, but firmly. And she exploded. Called me selfish. Ungrateful. My parents backed her, saying family helps family. That's when I lost it. I told them how I'd been paying the utilities at our parents' house when they were struggling. How I had secretly loaned my sister money during her college years. How I had always been the one cleaning up her messes. And now they expected me to literally sacrifice my body for her happiness? I packed my things and left that day. Blocked them all. Months later, I heard through a cousin that my sister tried to go through with IVF on her own and it failed. Now she's reaching out again, apologizing. She says she misses her sister. But I know better. She misses having someone to lean on. To use, so I stayed gone. And for the first time in years, I feel free. Story 7, my mom hid my inheritance for years. Until I found the letter that changed everything. I always thought my family was a bit odd when it came to money. We weren't poor by any means, but growing up, my mom acted like every penny she spent on me was some kind of burden. Meanwhile, my younger brother got everything he wanted, new clothes, the latest phone, even a car when he turned 16. I didn't question it much. I just assumed it was favoritism. Painful, but common. I worked through high school, bought my own clothes, and saved up to pay for college. When I got accepted into my dream university, I was over the moon. That joy didn't last. Mom sat me down and said, "You're going to community college. We can't afford anything else." I was devastated, but I nodded and didn't argue. I took on more hours at my part-time job and made it work. Years later, I was cleaning out the attic after my parents downsized, and I found a box of old documents. Tucked inside was a letter, addressed to me. It was from my late grandfather, written years ago. He talked about how proud he was of me and mentioned that he had left a substantial amount of money for my education and future. I froze. The letter mentioned the exact amount, $75,000. I had never seen a cent of it. Enraged and confused, I confronted my mom. At first, she played dumb. Then, she sighed and said, "Well, we needed it. And you were always the responsible one." She had used the money. For her, for my brother, for God knows what. She didn't apologize. She actually tried to justify it by saying, "You turned out fine, didn't you?" I left that day and decided I was done. I cut contact. I didn't yell or cry, I just stopped picking up the phone. I moved out of state, focused on my career, and started therapy. My life started to feel like mine for the first time. Fast forward to a year later, I got a message from my brother. He was panicking. Apparently, Mom had suffered a financial downfall and needed help. She asked him to reach out to me. I ignored the message. A few weeks after that, I received another letter. This time, it was a genuine apology from my mom. She finally admitted everything. She said she was sorry and ashamed. Did I forgive her? Not exactly, but I finally felt closure. That inheritance may have been stolen, but I realized something bigger: I don't owe loyalty to people who use me. I owe it to myself to build a life that's mine, free of guilt and manipulation.
Story 8. My brother demanded I sell my house so he could buy one. I told him, "You're not entitled to my life." When our parents passed away, they left behind a modest inheritance that we split evenly, my brother and I. I used mine wisely. I worked hard, saved more, and bought a small home. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My brother, on the other hand, spent his share within a year: vacations, gadgets, and a flashy car. Fast forward 5 years. He's now married with a child and still renting. I, meanwhile, have paid off most of my mortgage and enjoy a quiet, simple life. Then came the bombshell. He called me one evening and said, "I think it's time you sell your house and help me buy one." I laughed, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. He told me that since I didn't have kids and lived alone, it made more sense for me to downsize and give him the money. His wife was in the background, agreeing loudly. I was stunned. "You want me to give up my home because you mismanaged your life?" He said it was family duty, that I was being selfish by hoarding more than I need. I reminded him that I built this life on discipline and sacrifice. I skipped vacations. I worked extra hours. I didn't waste my money. He accused me of being heartless, of not caring about his child's future. He even dragged our late parents into it, saying, "Mom would have wanted you to help me." I told him calmly, "Mom would have wanted you to grow up." The next few days were chaos. He told our relatives I was greedy. Some believed him. A few called to guilt trip me. But one by one, I reminded them of how I'd helped the bills I'd covered for him before, the birthday parties I'd paid for his kid, even the emergency dental work his wife needed last year, all paid by me. Quietly. Without expecting anything in return. I finally told him, "You've burned through all the bridges I built for you. I'm not sacrificing my stability for your poor decisions." He hasn't spoken to me since. But the silence, it's peaceful. For the first time in a long while, I feel free. Not from family but from obligation masked as love.